two Doctor Who fans being positive about Doctor Who and agreeing on its best things, it can only be happy times and places with me, Toby Hadoke.
Hello, Toby. My name is Jonathan Morris, and I'm a writer. I write Doctor Who stories for Big Finish, I write articles for Doctor Who magazine, and I've recently co-written a huge book for BBC Books called Doctor Who: The Monster Vault. So I'm quite well versed in all things Doctor Who. The story I've chosen is the Peter Davison classic adventure from 1984, Warriors of the Deep.
Well, welcome back. We've got to bring Warriors of the Deep to a conclusion, and I'm afraid there's no other way but to press play in 3, 2, 1. I'm eating a nut. It's late. I need a bit of sustenance. Welcome. I hope you're well. Some of you are watching this. Some of you are listening. If you're a listener and you don't know about the watch, these episodes are all available on YouTube. So if you want to delve behind the scenes and see what the colour of the sofa I'm sitting on is, and whether I'm wearing any trousers. Actually, you can't even tell in the video if I'm wearing any trousers. Of course I'm not. No, I'm wearing trousers. You were a fool to be in the recap, Nielsen, because you won't get a credit on this episode because it all counts as last week's. Even though you're in this as a corpse, I'd have had a word with my agent and gone, strictly speaking, that's an appearance. But he's not credited on this episode. I remember my housemate saying they didn't understand why he didn't cover his eyes properly, but I think that's the camera getting underneath and showing that he's been blinded. I think they were being a bit... I was with drama students. They tend to... It shocked me how much drama students looked for faults in things as a kid, as a teenager, as a student. Whereas I always sort of went into things on the side of the program makers. I wasn't there to put them to the test or challenge them or find flaws in what they were doing, because it's what I wanted to be doing. But I was sort of deferent to the people that were doing it because they were where I aspired to be. I remember it being quite an eye-opener. Well, my contemporaries thought most of what we saw was rubbish. That they could do better. Perhaps that's always held me back. My respect for other people. No, I've done okay. And a lot of my contemporaries are doing other things, and a lot have done very, very well. So, and I don't think any of those things are dictated by our respective attitudes towards 1984 television. So no parallel should be drawn. Vincent Brimble as Tarpok. I've mentioned a lot, but he was an actor that I liked because he was Mr. Glover in Grange Hill, who was a bit mean. He wasn't a teacher, he was a governor. Georgie Glover's dad. And I'd seen him a few other things, and I'd been surprised then to discover I'd seen him in a Doctor Who, but of course, because you can't see him. And he was an actor that was in a lot at that time. And I think he was, as I say, it was a bit last minute, and he was doing somebody a favour. Because he's not really an actor that you would stick under latex, and he's had a great career since RSC. He's done loads and loads of telly, still working to this day. I think he's been in contention for a couple of things in newer Who as well, which would be lovely to see, because he's a very handsome fellow, he's a very nice guy, and he's a good actor. Keeps still working, as is his wife Janet Spencer Turner, who's a lovely actress. And their daughter Charlotte Brimble is an actor, and Nick Brimble, Vincent's brother, was Little John in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and his twin brother Ian was also an actor, but he's retired now. So they're quite a family, and as I say, he's a lovely man with a very attractive manner to him, and a good actor. Done loads of adverts because he's got sort of good. He must be 70 now, Vincent, but no, nice actor. Oh, and I went to see Louise Jameson in Hamlet. And drop in on her because she was doing Hamlet not far from where my mum lives, and Vincent was playing the ghost in that. So it's a funny old It's a funny old world. Whereas Norman Comer, who plays Ictor is a massive part. And he'd been a regular in one of the police series. Softy maybe. And he's still around, but he's never done an interview. I don't think he's ever answered a letter, bar maybe signing a picture. So maybe he doesn't think Ictor is his finest hour. I have a picture of him. I know what he looks like. But it's great. I actually think he's really good as Ictor. It's a decent part. He's a chatty monsters don't always work. They work best when they're sort of links or ones where you can get a sort of performance and a facial expression. And poor old Ictor is, you don't get any eye or mouth movement much, really. Not like the John Friedlander half masks. Oh, they will die in a sea of their own blood. I remember Gary Russell says Ictor cheerfully or something in his review. And I think he said, I seem to recall reading later that he'd said, we had to be positive, and I said, there's no way that Warriors of the Deep will ever be considered a classic, and they edited that down to say Warriors of the Deep is a classic, because the review was slightly sarky about it. I remember him saying how cheerful it was when he said Ictor said they'll die in a sea of their own blood. But yeah, he's behind the latex, and his voice has been treated, but he carries quite a lot of the dialogue, Ictor, and it's a decent role, and I think I think he does a decent job, all things considered. You'll get no help from me, Silurian. I love that. That's, if you've got somebody saying that, you want it to be Tom Adams doing it. I like Tom Adams is present. And Davison is great. And of course, there was a question as to, whether for me, even though I'd read the Cave Monsters, I hadn't seen the Silurians, and it's very different. But for me, the fact that he referred to Ictor as the last of the Silurian triad, I was basically, that's the scientist from the Silurians. If you examine it too closely, it doesn't tie in at all. And I know there's been attempts now to have other adventures, that breach that gap. But it's clearly the intention is to tie Ictor in with the adventure before, and with not all information being available. As a fan at the time, as a young fan, that was enough for me to go, yeah, okay, that's cool. That you've mentioned the Silurian triad. That's basically the three from the Silurians. The music is quite cheeky in this, isn't it? It gives it a lot of kind of, oh dear, what's going on here? Sort of asides, sort of cheeky asides from the music. It's like sort of noises off, sort of stage whispers. What's going on here? And I think the reason that the Silurians and Sea Devils are creatures worth always bringing back is because they put us in our place, in the sense that to them we are vermin, and I think that's a really interesting driver for a story, because we're used to going, no, people invading our planet, we've got every right to defend ourselves, and then suddenly we're in the position where the people doing that have a greater call to that defence than we do. And that's such a brilliant idea. That the heart of that, where, we're not even the invaders, because this is our planet in inverted commas. There's another bit of a wobble there. And I'm always one to say the sets don't wobble that much in Doctor Who. No, they don't, actually, any more than any other programme. Lazy journalism. Yeah, no, it really is. But I think I've said that before. Avail yourself of a show called Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, which is still available in bargain bins everywhere. But no, that central idea that I sort of, if we're on the planet Uxarius or something, we're colonizing that. So, us being invaders is it's still a moral dilemma in a way, but it's a bit more cut and dried. Whereas this, it's not cut and dried because we haven't invaded anywhere here, and yet we have basically built our civilization on the ruins of another one, and they just woke up. Bulett gets to be quite heroic in this. Oh yeah, the Doctor just walks out, doesn't he? I've forgotten about that. Big old set. But yes, I remember the review in Doctor Who magazine seemed to slightly take the mickey out of this. This story as a whole. And the Sea Devil, because they didn't like the Sea Devil string vests, so they went for this samurai thing, which when they do that with the Draconians in Frontier in Space, it works, but partially because they're a species that get a performance and have different characters. Apart from Salvix, the Sea Devils in this are sort of grunts, and that was what Johnny Byrne wanted. He sort of saw them as sort of foot soldiers, with the Silurians being the sort of mouthpiece. But I think I prefer the string vest. I think it's a better showcase for the mask. I think the mask looks better. The head looks better, not with the hat on. A couple of dead Parolis there. No, it's not. Although they are decent costumes. They did, and the black colour scheme is good. That's a great shot. I like that. With the heads of the heads of the departing soldiers and Iktar in the background as he sends them off to kill the Doctor. That's a really nice shot, actually. So yeah, I was having sort of said I'm not sure about the samurai thing. I actually think they're decently done as a concept. Oh, and this, of course, yes. So the sync up, and that's a great idea. The idea that yes, you can't, you can't initiate a nuclear war without a specially trained person and without the brain syncing in with the computer. Which for years we were told. For years we were told this is a complete riff off of the Space 1999 episode, but it's not really. But that idea is quite good. The sort of element of human control of the ultimate nuclear thing that loomed so large in 1984, which was a year not named after anything particularly cheerful. What times we lived in. Have the Silurians got? I just noticed they've got sort of two fingers, and they've got like a sort of double finger. This is great, this stuff, because, okay, so we've introduced the hexachroma, and all us young dudes have gone, oh, that's a terrible plot thing, but actually, no, because the plot is, the moral dilemma is, we've had the means to defeat them all this time, can we choose a better means? And of course, we're going to get... we're gonna have a Sea Devil killed by the hexachromite, which means I don't think it's this one that gets the green goo, is it? I think it's when Sarvix dies he gets the green goo. Which I think the green goo. Oh no, it's the green goo is there. There's a sort of money shot. That's the green goo shot. I'm sure there's a pteroleptil that green goos. The Malice is sick green goo. I'm sure I've done another green goo as part of this, so I'm just trying to think of what stories I've watched. Khalid, he gets a bit of green goo that nearly kills somebody, the person underneath it. And this is why we spotted the hexachromate, so that Lieutenant Preston, Tara Ward, can go quite reasonably as far as she's concerned. They've killed loads of my mates. They're going to launch the nuclear codes. We've got a reason. We've got a way to kill them. Kill them like this. And it's the dilemma at the heart of Doctor Who. You've got to, we think of the Doctor as a man of peace and learning. So when does he decide actually that to preserve that, I have to kill? But then, of course, all tyrants have used, well, I'm preserving what's good at the cost of all these lives, but it's worth it because of what's good. It depends what you decide is worth it, isn't it? And that depends what side you're on. Whoa. I do miss, and in the modern Silurians, I mean, I know they've gone for performance, and that's laudable. And I mean, in that story, you've got the Hungry Earth. You've got Niamh McIntosh and Stephen Moore and Richard Hope. You've got three very good actors. You don't want to stick them behind puckered Siluri gobs, but I do miss the fact that they look like monsters rather than human beings. The human being mouth, nose, and eyes thing. And I think the third eye, because the third eye and the point of view in Doctor of the Silurians is a terrific and again weird thing, and they've got a funny sort of, they're a bit more sort of feral. They've got a funny sort of gait and that guttural voice. Tom Adams is stoically going through this. He was a big cricket fan, Tom Adams. In fact, I think he had an MCC tie on. I got the impression, did I see him smoke a cigar? But I don't know, but I got the impression he was a cigar smoker. Had a long brown coat. But yeah, he was a big cricket man. Yeah, look, they've got a thumb, two fingers, and then two fingers sort of stuck together. And very stubby fingers. Of course, yes, because today you'd probably, go for a bit of choreography with monsters and stuff. But in those days, they're encased in latex. They must have been absolutely drenched under studio lights. Oh, many a fine actor has suffered for the sake of Doctor Who. And so this is Salvik's Christopher Farries, who was supposed to be playing the megaphone man in Snake Dance, and ended up not doing so. So again, it's interesting how so many of these actors are sort of miss out on a part, like Robert Ashby, the Borat, who does the BBC Shakespeare instead of this, and then does the Borat a bit later. Christopher Farries misses out in Snake Dance, comes back to this a bit later, totally different director, but. Shows if people are around. If you're in their thoughts. Go for it, Preston! No! Oh, they killed Preston, you swines! And Bulick comes to the rescue because Bulick's a hero. Ingrid Pitt was considered for Preston, and it's actually no smaller a part than Solar, really, and she'd have probably still got. She'd have still been considered a guest star because all the parts are fairly decent sized in this. Preston would have just been slightly more Estonian, or I guess. Was she Estonian? Whatever, wherever Ingrid Pitt was from. Now, this story was also one of the last, is Toby's favourite morbid thing, the last to have no deceased cast members. Can't remember what order it was, but there was Frontios, there was, I could if I put my mind to it, Dragonfire and City of Death, I think were the last to have no deceased cast members. But then Ingrid Pitt died and Tom Adams died. But other than that, then clench your fist. I remember my friends laughing at that he was saying, I'm not going to be responsible, but I'll hold my hand out. But I think that's because you see the Sea Devil then grab his hand and make him do it. I think the Sea Devils aren't dexterous enough. Their fingers aren't nimble enough to force him to do it. So the actor had to sort of make a compromise. So, and I nonetheless admire Tom Adams' stoicism throughout this episode. So what was I talking about? Can't remember. And of course, yes, this becomes a sort of bloodbath. Everybody dies, which again makes this pretty grim stuff. But this is what I wanted as a kid. I wanted, seeing as we've had, I love Four to Doomsday now. I love Black Orchid. I love Kinder. But I found them all a bit sort of perplexing and quite slow as a kid. Whereas the ones like this, where people died and there was action and there were monsters, this was great stuff. Although this is quite confusing. Poor old Tom Adams manages to get a death scene that is quite the most indistinct death scene, I think, in the whole of the bar. Maybe Jacqueline Hill in Meglos, whose death scene is a catalogue of woes in terms of how necessary it isn't, and how well realised it isn't. But because Tom Adams has been so sort of chiselled throughout the whole thing, the fact that he barely reacts to something we don't really see isn't helped by the fact that he's had the same expression sort of throughout. I wish I could remember what I was talking about. It's quite late now. I'm talking to you at 24 minutes past 1, because you see I do this when everyone in the house has gone to bed. And of course it's great. Yeah, it's this is where the Doctor steps into the breach and has to be heroic. And Davison really makes us go through this. You really get the impression that the Doctor has really suffered. So yeah, you've gone to. Tegan has gone to help Skibbus or Tarpok, which has left Iktar free, but it's not particularly clear. We've seen him sort of recover a bit, but then Turlo has to be post-dubbed in ADR to go look out commander, which hasn't. I don't think that's happened yet. Yeah. So, oh no. Yeah, so, gosh, they're both on Iktar, and he's got a gun in his hand. God, they were wrestling him for a while there, and yeah, Turlo has had to add Lookout Commander in ADR, and then he decides to shoot Iktar, and Iktar gets his heart blown out, which is quite grim, but it does mean that it's not very clear, because there was nowhere in the shot that you could put the laser gun. And as I say, Tom Adams looks vaguely like he's got indigestion. And now he dies, but as I say, his reaction was pretty much how he'd reacted to everything else. And yet I still feel it. Because I love the way that Mark Strickson delivers that line. I think Gary Russell said something about how cheerfully he says that in the review. And yet, even though I think it's slightly flubbed, I sort of like Vorshak's death. And that shot's great. And Peter Davison, I mean, that makeup is superb. And his delivery of this line is fantastic. I mean, it's fairly straightforward stuff of war is hell and all of that sort of thing. But in Doctor Who terms, I think that's brilliantly done. It's a great way to end the story. No time for a sort of funny thing back to the TARDIS or whatever. Everybody apart from Bulik is dead. Bulik's going to have some explaining to do. And yes, not even the poor old commander was able to see it through, because of a slightly flubbed shooting that Turlough had to make sense of in post production. Salute Matt Irvin, what a hero, and Dave Chapman. Both of those guys actually were names to conjure if you are watching Doctor Who in the 80s. I think that's an absolutely perfectly enjoyable Doctor Who story with a few notorious errors or shortcomings, some of which were dictated by, a quick reshuffle in timing and studio and the unavailability of the main visual effects designer. So I think there are Doctor Who stories that have committed greater crimes, and even if I can't necessarily justify my reasons for liking it, I still do. Do you know what I mean? It's guilty pleasure, I suppose, in a way, if you like. But I'm entertained by a piece of entertainment. It's done its job. Surely it's done its job, and I'm not looking at it loftily or askance. I'm perfectly happy to spend 4 episodes in the company of the crew of Seabase 4. So, my favourite, I love There Should Have Been Another Way. So I think that's got to be my favourite thing for episode 4, or my bonus thing, one or the other. I've got to choose one more thing. I think the nuclear thing and the sync operator and the premise of the 2 power blocks, I think that was very important at the time, very, very resonant at the time, and I think it's got a science fiction twist with the sync operator having to be hooked up. That gives it something that's not just a lazy reflection of the times, as it were, and it gives the story a drive, and it gives the plot something to hook on, and it gives something for some of the characters to have. So yeah, the nuclear face-off thing with the sync operator element and There Should Have Been Another Way are my 2 favourite things from episode 4 of Warriors of the Deep, or one from episode 4 and one bonus. What is Johnny Morris going to wow us with for his? He's been quite brief, hasn't he?
And my best thing about episode 4 is Tom Adams, his performance as Commander Vorshak, where he could have been James Bond. He did play a sort of James Bond in the 1970s, as well as being the voice and face of DFS carpets. So Tom Adams. And then I'm allowed my bonus thing. My bonus thing is that the premise of the story, with this underground undersea base where you don't know which sides it is, doing run-throughs for a nuclear war in the future, is rather similar to the Out of the Unknown play Level 7, as produced by Irene Shubik. And I'm convinced that Toby will not be able to resist the temptation of mentioning something to do with Irene Shubik.
Or Rudolph Cartier, because it's directed by...
My chance to plug my wares.
Johnny always takes the mickey out of my Who's Round podcast, because I always mention that if anyone's ever worked with Rudolph Cartier. So I thought he was going to say Toby won't resist the fact that it's directed by Rudolph Cartier, who directed Quatermass, because Johnny mocks me about that. And I nearly chose Tom Adams, but I thought I might be doing so archly. But I'm happy for him to be chosen. Love a bit of Tom Adams, and yeah, he was. I think he was considered for James Bond. Johnny's going to plug his wares.
Okay, that's all I have. My chance to plug my wares. I have lots of Doctor Who stuff coming up. I have Genetics of the Daleks might have come out by now. I have Ghosts with David Tennant and River Song. I have River Song, Queen of the Mechanoids. I have the Fourth Doctor and Leela in Day of the Comet. I have the Blogs of Doom in Doctor Who magazine, get that every month, and I have the Monster Vault. So get all that, and who knows, by the time this is played out, I'll probably have written another 20 Big Finish audios, 2 books, and a load of magazine articles. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and cheers.
Oh, thanks, Johnny. He's a very witty man. He's got a very smart and underplayed sense of humour, but that shoots through all of his writing. And he's a very, very humble and very nice. Bizarrely, the recording cut out there. It had worked throughout the entire thing. And then when I tried to call Johnny Morris a nice man, the microphone flatly refused to accept that information. But he's a very nice man. And so I'm saying it again for the record. And it also gives me a chance to mention Dick Dixon in the 21st Century, which is written by Johnny and produced by him too. He got me to direct it. I'm a guest star in the first episode. The series regulars include Kieran Hodgson. Oh, brilliant, talented, funny Kieran Hodgson. Terry Malloy, a.k.a. Davros, and loads of voices for Big Finish. Suze Kempner, who's a multi-talented vocal performer. Jez Fielder from various Big Finishes. Dan Starkey, Strax himself, and another absolutely brilliant vocal performer. The comedian Alison June Smith rounds out the cast of this spoof of Dan Dare, Buck Rogers, and any other science fiction show you'd care to mention. Just Google Dick Dixon in the 21st Century, and there's a lot of fun to be had there. We've done a Kickstarter that's been successful, so more episodes will be produced, but the pilot is out there now, waiting to be found. So it's not a pilot of the future, it's a pilot of the right now. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places with me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Jonathan Morris, who can be found on Twitter at JohnnyMorris1973, no H in the Johnny. Thanks to this podcast's patrons, who include Mark Owen, Mark Dakin, Ian Gillespie, James Gould, Lisa C. Greco, Dave Hoskin, Jessica Jones, Andrew Jordan, Clive Lewis, Guy Lambert, James Lark, Gavin McLean, David Matthewman, John McClay, Ross McPhillips, Stuart Mitchell, Nathan Moore, Matthew Newton, Melvin Pena, and Keith Pirrie. The music for this podcast is specially composed by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork is by Dylan Patterson. You can become a patron and qualify for early releases and exclusive materials. There's a whole exclusive podcast called Far Too Much Information, which goes really, really deep into early script drafts and arcana about supporting actors and all sorts of other stuff. It's got a great soundtrack too. Patronage is possible from as little as £3 a month, and you do get charged immediately, and can be found at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Now, that's a commitment, although there is a 10% reduction if you commit to a year up front. But yeah, as I say, it is a commitment. So if you want to do a one-off instead, kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. You can donate whatever you like to the running costs and time and energy that are expended upon these things. But I know that times are tough, so if you are unable or not inclined to do that, and that's absolutely fine, just listening is justification enough. But hey, you could go to your podcast outlet and give these a 5-star rating and perhaps a few positive words of review, and maybe go into cyberspace and say nice things too. We're at Hadoke Podcasts on Twitter, so follow there as well and include them in all the nice things that you might want to say. Any of those things would be really, really helpful in this day and age where the state of one's algorithms is a really good sign if they're in tip-top condition. Once you've given my algorithms a tweak, you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe there. And you can also go to twitch.tv/XS Malarkey, the letter X, the letter S, Malarkey, Malarkey. There's a live comedy show there. I'll be on it with 4 comedians from the worldwide comedy circuit every Tuesday at 8 p.m. GMT. But even now, there's an archive of stuff and clips and past shows and all sorts. That's twitch.tv/XS Malarkey.